Welcome to the Artificial Fluency podcast. I'm Emily. Today's episode is designed especially for intermediate English learners. We will listen to real-life stories and examples that will not only improve your listening skills, but also help you get better at writing. When you hear how people tell their experiences, it becomes easier to understand English in everyday conversations and express yourself clearly in writing. Let me start with a few questions for you. Have you ever faced a situation where you had to solve a problem quickly? Or maybe you had a surprising experience that taught you something important. Think about a time when you learned a lesson from your family or friends. Keep these questions in mind as we listen to today's stories. Our first story is about Daniel and his unexpected adventure during a weekend trip. Daniel planned to visit a nearby town with his wife Anna. They wanted to relax and enjoy some fresh air. However, things did not go as planned. On their way, their car suddenly stopped working in the middle of nowhere. Daniel tried to fix it, but he realized he needed help. Instead of feeling frustrated, Daniel and Anna decided to explore the small village nearby while waiting for assistance. They met kind people who shared stories about the village's history and local traditions. This experience showed Daniel that sometimes unexpected problems can lead to wonderful new memories. Now, let's talk about another story. This time, it is about Sarah, a teacher who wanted to improve her students' motivation. Sarah noticed that some students were struggling with confidence. She decided to create a simple daily challenge for them. Every student would write a short paragraph about their day or feelings. At first, the students were shy, but slowly they began to open up through writing. Sarah found that reading their paragraphs helped her understand her students better and plan lessons that matched their needs. This example shows how listening and writing can work together to improve communication. Next, I want to share a story about Michael, who works in a busy office. One day, his boss asked him to prepare a report on a new project. Michael was nervous because he had never written a report before. To prepare, he listened carefully to the project meeting recordings and took detailed notes. He also practiced writing summaries based on what he heard. Thanks to this practice, Michael wrote a clear and organized report that impressed his boss. This story teaches us that listening carefully and writing regularly can build confidence and skills at the same time. Before we continue, ask yourself, how do you usually practice your listening? Do you listen to stories, podcasts, or conversations? Try to notice new words, expressions, and how sentences are formed. This will help you improve not just listening, but also your own speaking and writing. Our final story for today is about Emma and her husband John. They decided to start a small business selling homemade crafts. At first, they found it difficult to explain their ideas clearly to customers. Emma started recording their conversations to review later. Listening again helped her understand where she could improve her explanations. She also wrote down common questions from customers and prepared clear answers. Over time, their communication became better, and their business grew steadily. This example shows the power of listening to yourself and writing to improve communication skills. Remember, every story you hear is an opportunity to learn new vocabulary, understand sentence structure, and improve your overall English. Practice. Listening actively and try writing summaries or your own versions of these stories. This will boost your skills faster. So, tell me, which story did you like the most? Do you have a similar experience? Feel free to share your thoughts with us in the comments. Press the like button to support the English Pod community and keep learning with us every day. This next story is about Tom and his experience at a new job. Tom started working in a big office last month. At first, he felt nervous because he didn't know many people. One day, his manager asked him to join a team meeting. Tom listened carefully to what everyone said and took notes on his phone. After the meeting, he wrote a short email to his manager summarizing the main points and his ideas. His manager was impressed by Tom's clear communication. This shows how listening well and writing clearly can help you succeed at work. Now, let me tell you about Lisa, who lives in a small town. Lisa wanted to improve her English to talk better with neighbors and shopkeepers. Every day she listened to short stories on her phone while walking in the park. After listening, she wrote down new words and tried to use them in her own sentences. Over time, Lisa became more confident speaking English outside her home. Her practice shows how listening and writing together help build strong language skills. Here's another story about David and his visit to a farmer's market with his wife Emily. They wanted to buy fresh vegetables for dinner. While shopping, David listened carefully to the sellers and asked questions about the produce. Later, at home, he wrote a short note about what he learned. This helped him remember new words like organic, fresh, and ripe. David's story reminds us that real-life situations are perfect for practicing listening and writing. Think about your own life. Have you ever listened carefully to someone and then tried to write or explain what you heard? This is a great way to improve both skills. Next, I want to share a story about Anna, who enjoys cooking. Anna found a recipe in English, but had trouble understanding some parts. She listened to an online cooking podcast that explained the recipe step by step. While listening, Anna wrote down important tips and ingredients. This helped her follow the recipe easily and make a delicious meal. This story shows how combining listening and writing can help you learn new skills in everyday life. Before we move on, let me ask you, how do you practice writing after listening? Do you try to write short paragraphs or notes? Writing even a few sentences about what you hear helps your brain remember better. Our last story for today is about John and his experience learning to use new technology at work. John was asked to use a new computer program but found it confusing. He watched training videos and listened carefully to instructions. John took notes during each session and later wrote a summary in his own words. Writing helped him understand the steps better. Soon he was able to use the program with confidence. John's story teaches us that writing after listening is a smart way to learn complicated tasks. Now, as you listen to different stories, try to practice by writing down important points or new words. This will improve your memory and help you use English more naturally. Which of these stories did you find most helpful? You can practice by telling your own story or writing about someone you know. Keep listening and writing every day to see real progress. Let me tell you a longer story about Mark and his experience moving to a new city. Mark moved to London for a new job. At first, everything was very new and a little confusing. He did not know how to use the bus system or where the closest grocery store was. On his first day, Mark took the bus to work, but he missed his stop because he was not listening carefully to the driver's announcements. After that, Mark decided to pay more attention to what people said around him. He listened to conversations, announcements, and signs every day. He also made a notebook to write down new words and important information. When Mark wrote about what he heard, it helped him remember how to get around the city. Slowly, he became more confident traveling on his own. He even helped a new colleague who was lost on the bus. Mark's story shows us how listening carefully and writing things down can help us feel more comfortable in new places. It also teaches us to be patient with ourselves when learning. Now I want to share a story about Rachel and how she learned to communicate better with her husband James. Rachel and James have been married for 5 years. Sometimes they have small disagreements because they do not understand each other perfectly. One day, Rachel decided to listen carefully when James spoke about his day. She made notes about what he said and the feelings behind his words. Then she wrote a letter to James explaining what she understood and how she felt. James was happy to read the letter and said it helped him feel closer to Rachel. After that, they started to write short notes to each other more often. Rachel's story shows how listening and writing can help people connect better and avoid misunderstandings. It also shows that English is not just about grammar or vocabulary, but about sharing feelings and ideas clearly. Next, I want to talk about Ben. Ben works in a busy restaurant as a manager. Every day, he talks with many customers and staff. Sometimes, customers ask difficult questions about food or prices. Ben found it hard to remember all the answers. So, he started recording short voice notes on his phone after work. He listened to these notes and wrote down common questions and answers. Then, he practiced speaking and writing these answers clearly. Because of this practice, Ben became faster and more confident when helping customers. Ben's experience teaches us that listening to ourselves and writing can improve our communication skills quickly. It also reminds us that practice is the key to success. Let me share a longer story about Emma and how she improved her English by reading and listening every day. Emma is a nurse and she moved to a new country last year. At first, she found English very difficult, especially when patients spoke quickly. Emma decided to listen to simple English stories every morning during breakfast. After listening, she wrote short summaries of the stories in her notebook. Sometimes Emma read her summaries aloud to practice speaking. Over time, Emma noticed that she understood patients better and could explain things more clearly at work. She also made new friends because she could join conversations more easily. Emma's story shows the power of daily listening and writing practice. It also shows how small steps can lead to big improvements. Now, think about Michael and his hobby of gardening. Michael loves plants, but he did not know many English words related to gardening. He found a gardening podcast and started listening every weekend. After each episode, Michael wrote down new words like soil, seeds, and fertilizer. Then he used these words to write a simple diary about his own garden. Writing helped Michael remember the words and use them correctly. When he talked to other gardeners, he felt more confident. Michael's story teaches us that combining listening and writing helps us learn vocabulary in a useful way. It also shows that learning English can be fun when it connects with our interests. Here is another story about Lucy and her experience learning to cook English recipes. Lucy wanted to make traditional dishes from English-speaking countries. She found a website with cooking instructions and audio guides. Lucy listened to the instructions carefully and wrote down the steps in her own words. She also wrote notes about ingredients she did not know before. When Lucy cooked, she followed her notes and felt proud of her results. This practice helped Lucy improve both her listening and writing. It also gave her confidence to try new things in English. Lucy's story reminds us that practicing English can happen in everyday activities, like cooking. Finally, I want to share a story about David and how he prepared for an important presentation at work. David was nervous because he had to speak in English in front of his colleagues. To prepare, he recorded himself reading the presentation several times. Then, he listened to the recordings and wrote down places where he could improve pronunciation or use better words. David practiced these parts until he felt comfortable. On the day of the presentation, David spoke clearly and confidently. His boss complimented him for the excellent work. David's story shows that listening to ourselves and writing feedback can help us become better speakers. It also shows that preparation is very important. Now, as you listen to all these stories, I want you to think about your own experiences. Try to write short notes or summaries after you listen to something in English. It could be a story, a conversation, or even something you hear at work or school. Writing helps your brain remember and understand better. It also makes you more confident when you speak. Remember, the key to improving your English listening and writing is practice every day. Listen carefully, write often, and do not worry about mistakes. Mistakes are part of learning. The more you practice, the better you become. Let me tell you a longer story about Michael and his journey to learn English after moving to a new city. Michael moved from a small town to Manchester for a new job. At first, he found the city very big and confusing. He was nervous because many people spoke quickly, and he could not always understand them. Michael decided to listen carefully to people around him. Every morning he took the bus and listened to the announcements. He also listened to conversations between passengers. Sometimes he did not understand everything, but he tried his best to catch important words. After his bus ride, Michael wrote down the new words and phrases he heard. He made a small notebook and used it every day. This helped him remember the words better. When Michael got to work, he talked to his colleagues slowly and asked questions. At first they were patient and explained things again. After a few weeks, Michael noticed he was understanding more and speaking better. He felt proud because his listening practice and writing notes helped him improve. This story shows that moving to a new place and practicing listening every day helps you learn English faster. Now I want to share a story about Sarah, who wanted to improve her English to help her children with school homework. Sarah's children speak English at school, but at home they speak their native language. Sarah found it hard to help her children with reading and writing homework. She decided to listen to simple English stories on her phone every evening. After listening, Sarah wrote short summaries about the stories. She also learned new words and practiced spelling them. Sarah read the summaries aloud to her children and asked them questions. This helped Sarah feel more confident with English and also helped her children enjoy learning. Sarah's story shows how listening and writing together can improve language, skills, and help in everyday life with family. Let me tell you about John, who works as a delivery driver. John has to meet many new people every day. At the start, he found it hard to understand customers because of different accents and fast speech. John decided to listen to English radio while driving. He chose programs about daily news and stories. After each program, John wrote down the main ideas and new words. Sometimes he made simple questions about the news to test his understanding. John also practiced speaking by repeating sentences he heard. This practice helped John understand customers better and answer their questions clearly. His story shows how using time during travel to listen and write can improve English in practical ways. Next, I want to share a story about Emily and her hobby of gardening. Emily wanted to learn English words about plants and flowers because she wanted to join a gardening club. She found an online podcast about gardening in English. Emily listened carefully every week and wrote down the names of plants, tools, and gardening activities. She made flashcards with the words and their meanings. Emily also wrote short paragraphs about her own garden using the new words. When she went to the gardening club, she felt confident talking with other members. Emily's story teaches us that learning English related to your interests is more fun and useful. Let me tell you a longer story about David and his experience buying a new car. David wanted to buy a car but did not know much about cars in English. He went to a car dealership and listened carefully to the salesman. The salesman explained different models, prices, and features. David took notes during the conversation and asked many questions. After the visit, David wrote a list of the features he wanted in a car. He also wrote down the questions he had for the next visit. When David returned to the dealership, he was more confident and understood the information better. He chose the right car and was happy with his decision. David's story shows how listening carefully and writing notes help in important decisions. It also shows that preparation and practice make communication easier. Now think about Anna. Anna works as a nurse and needs to understand patients quickly. Sometimes patients speak very fast or use difficult words. Anna listens to English podcasts about health and medicine every day. After listening, she writes summaries of the important points. She also writes questions she can use with patients. Writing helps Anna remember the words and ideas. She also practices speaking the questions before work. Anna's story shows that listening and writing are important in professional life. It also teaches us to practice language related to our jobs. Let me tell you about Tom and his interest in sports. Tom loves football and wants to talk about games with his friends. He watches interviews with players and listens to sports commentaries. Tom writes down players' names, scores, and important words used in football. He writes short reports about matches in his notebook. This helps Tom use new words when talking with friends. Tom's story shows that combining listening and writing about hobbies makes learning English interesting and useful. Finally, I want to share a story about Lisa and how she learned to cook English recipes. Lisa found a website with simple recipes and audio instructions. She listened to the instructions carefully and wrote down the steps in her own words. Lisa also wrote notes about ingredients and cooking terms. When she cooked, she used her notes to follow the recipe. This practice helped Lisa improve both listening and writing. It also gave her confidence to try new recipes in English. Lisa's story shows that practicing English during daily activities makes learning natural. Now, as you listen to all these stories, think about how you can use listening and writing in your own life. Try to write notes, summaries, or questions after listening. It will help you remember and use English better. Keep practicing every day and you will see progress. Let me tell you a longer story about James and his experience working in a supermarket. James started working as a cashier last year. At first, he found it hard to understand customers because they spoke quickly and used many words he did not know. James decided to listen carefully to each customer and write down new words he heard. He made a list of common phrases people used at the supermarket. After work, James practiced reading and writing these phrases. He also used them when talking to his friends. Slowly, James felt more confident. One day, a customer asked James about a product and James could answer without problems. This made James very happy. His story shows that listening carefully and writing new words can help improve English step by step. Now I want to share a story about Emma, who lives in a small town and wanted to learn English to communicate better with her neighbors. Emma often heard her neighbors talking in English but did not understand everything. She started listening to simple English podcasts every morning while having breakfast. After listening, Emma wrote short notes about what she heard. Sometimes she wrote questions to ask her neighbors. Emma also practiced reading her notes aloud to improve her speaking. After some weeks, Emma felt ready to talk more with her neighbors. They were happy to help her practice. Emma's story shows how listening and writing help improve language skills and build confidence. Let me tell you about Mark, who works as a bus driver. Mark meets many people every day, but some customers speak very fast or use local slang. Mark found it difficult to understand all the words. He decided to listen to English radio programs while driving. He focused on news and simple stories. After listening, Mark wrote down the main points and new words. He also wrote sentences using these words. Mark practiced reading the sentences and used them in conversations. This helped Mark understand people better and communicate more clearly at work. Mark's story shows that listening and writing every day help improve English for work. Next, I want to share a story about Lucy and her hobby of cooking. Lucy loves to try new recipes from English-speaking countries. She found a website with recipes and audio instructions. Lucy listened carefully to the instructions and wrote down the steps in her own words. She also wrote new words for ingredients and cooking tools. When Lucy cooked, she followed her notes and felt confident. This practice helped Lucy improve her English listening and writing. It also gave her the chance to try new foods. Lucy's story shows that learning English while doing things you enjoy makes practice easier and more fun. Let me tell you a longer story about Paul, who wanted to improve his English for his job as a delivery driver. Paul had to talk to many customers, but he sometimes did not understand their questions. Paul started listening to English podcasts about everyday conversations. After each episode, Paul wrote summaries of the main ideas and new words. He also wrote questions and answers to practice. Paul repeated this every day. After some time, Paul felt more confident talking with customers. He could answer questions faster and clearly. Paul's story shows that listening to real-life English and writing notes helps you improve communication skills. Now think about Anna, who works as a nurse. Anna has to understand patients quickly and clearly. Sometimes patients speak very fast or use difficult words. Anna listens to English podcasts about health and medicine every day. After listening, she writes short summaries and important words. She also writes questions she can ask patients. This writing helps Anna remember the words and speak better at work. Anna's story shows that listening and writing are important skills in professional life. It also shows that practicing English related to your job helps you learn faster. Let me tell you about Tom, who loves football. Tom wants to talk about games with his friends but did not know many football words in English. He listens to sports podcasts every weekend. Tom writes down players' names, scores, and important football words. He also writes short reports about the matches he listens to. This helps Tom use new words when talking with friends. Tom's story shows that combining listening and writing about your interests makes learning English more interesting and useful. Finally, I want to share a story about Lisa and how she learned English by listening to recipes and cooking instructions. Lisa found a website with simple recipes and audio guides. She listened carefully and wrote down the steps in her own words. Lisa also wrote notes about ingredients and cooking tools she did not know before. When Lisa cooked, she used her notes to follow the recipe. This practice helped Lisa improve her listening and writing skills. It also gave her confidence to try new recipes in English. Lisa's story shows that practicing English during everyday activities makes learning easier and more natural. As you listen to these stories, try to think about how you can use listening and writing in your own life. Write notes, summaries, or questions after listening to something in English. This will help you remember and use English better. Practice every day, and you will see improvement. Let's continue with more stories and examples to help you practice your English listening and writing skills. Remember, on the English Pod community, we upload new videos every day to help you improve. Please press the like button if you find this episode useful. Let me tell you a story about Robert, who moved to London for work. At first, Robert found the city very busy and noisy. He had trouble understanding people because they spoke quickly and sometimes used unfamiliar words. Robert decided to listen carefully to conversations around him, especially on the subway and in cafes. He kept a small notebook with him and wrote down any new words or phrases he heard. After work, Robert looked up the meaning of those words and practiced writing sentences with them. Slowly, Robert's English improved. He could understand his colleagues better and join in on conversations. Robert's story shows that listening carefully in real-life situations and writing new words helps build vocabulary and confidence. Now let me share a story about Claire, who wanted to help her children with their schoolwork. Claire's children study in English, but she was not confident in her English skills. She decided to listen to simple English podcasts every evening. After listening, Claire wrote short notes about the stories and the new words she learned. She also practiced reading the notes aloud to improve her speaking. Claire asked her children to check her writing and explain any mistakes. Over time, Claire's listening and writing improved, and she was able to help her children better with their homework. Claire's story teaches us that listening and writing practice can help with family and daily life. Let me tell you about David, who works in a restaurant as a waiter. David meets many customers and has to understand different accents. At first, David found it hard to follow conversations because people spoke quickly. He started listening to English radio during his commute to work. David chose programs about daily news and simple stories. After listening, he wrote down new words and expressions. He also practiced speaking by repeating sentences he heard. This daily routine helped David improve his understanding and communication skills. David's story shows that using free time to listen and write helps improve English for work. Next, I want to share a story about Helen and her love of gardening. Helen wanted to join a gardening club where people spoke English. She found an English podcast about gardening and started listening to it every week. Helen wrote down the names of plants, tools, and gardening actions she heard. She made flashcards with the words and their meanings. Helen also wrote short paragraphs about her own garden using the new vocabulary. When Helen attended the gardening club, she felt more confident talking with other members. Helen's story teaches us that learning English about your hobbies is fun and useful. Listening and writing help remember new words. Let me tell you a longer story about Jack, who wanted to buy a new phone. Jack was not sure which phone to buy because the salesman used many technical words in English. Jack listened carefully and wrote down the features and questions he had. After visiting a few shops, Jack wrote a list of the phones he liked and the words he learned. When he went back to the shop, he was more confident. He understood the salesman better and chose the right phone. Jack's story shows that listening carefully and writing notes helps with important decisions. Now think about Olivia, who works as a nurse. Olivia needs to understand patients quickly. Sometimes patients speak very fast or use difficult words. Olivia listens to English podcasts about health every day. After listening, she writes short summaries of what she heard. She also writes questions to ask patients. Writing helps Olivia remember words and speak better at work. Olivia's story shows that listening and writing are important in professional life. Let me tell you about Sam, who loves football. Sam wants to talk about games with his friends. He listens to football podcasts every weekend. Sam writes down player names, scores, and important words. He writes short reports about the matches. This helps Sam use new words when talking with friends. Sam's story shows that combining listening and writing about your interests makes learning English fun and useful. Finally, I want to share a story about Kate, who learned to cook English recipes. Kate found a website with simple recipes and audio instructions. She listened carefully and wrote the steps in her own words. Kate wrote notes about ingredients and cooking tools. When she cooked, she used her notes. This practice helped Kate improve her listening and writing skills. It gave her confidence to try new recipes. Kate's story shows that practicing English during daily activities makes learning natural. As you listen to these stories, think about how you can use listening and writing in your own life. Write notes, summaries, or questions after listening. This will help you remember and use English better. Practice every day and you will see improvement. I want to tell you about Mark. Mark works in an office. He often has to speak with clients on the phone. At first, Mark found it hard to understand some clients because they spoke very quickly. Mark decided to listen to English radio programs while he traveled to work. He picked programs about the news and daily life. After listening, Mark wrote down new words and phrases he heard. He also wrote short sentences using these words. Mark practiced reading his sentences out loud to improve his speaking. After a few weeks, Mark noticed he could understand clients much better. He felt more confident on the phone. Mark's story shows that listening every day and writing what you learn helps improve your English. Next, I want to talk about Emma. Emma loves cooking. She found a website with easy English recipes and audio instructions. Every weekend, Emma listened to these recipes while cooking. She wrote down the names of ingredients and cooking tools. Emma also wrote the steps in her own words. This helped her remember the vocabulary and understand the instructions better. When Emma cooked, she followed her notes. After some time, Emma could listen to new recipes and cook without reading instructions. Emma's story teaches us that listening and writing about your hobbies make learning English interesting and useful. Now let me tell you about John. John is a teacher. He wants to help his students learn English better. John listens to English podcasts about teaching and education. He writes down important ideas and new words. John also writes questions he can ask his students to help them practice. Writing helps John remember the information and explain it well. John's story shows that listening and writing are useful for work and learning. I want to share the story of Lucy. Lucy moved to a new city where people speak English. She wanted to make friends and join activities. Lucy started listening to podcasts about social life and events in her city. After listening, Lucy wrote short paragraphs about the activities she learned. She also wrote questions to ask people when she met them. Writing helped Lucy feel ready to talk with new friends. Lucy's story shows that listening and writing help in daily life and making friends. Let me tell you about Peter. Peter works in a shop. He talks with many customers every day. Sometimes customers use words Peter does not know. Peter listens to English podcasts during breaks. He writes down new words and practices using them. Peter also writes short reports about his day at work. Writing helps Peter improve his grammar and vocabulary. Peter's story shows that practicing English every day, even at work, helps you get better. Now, I want to tell you about Anna. Anna enjoys reading books in English. She found a podcast where people read stories aloud. Anna listens carefully and writes summaries of the stories. She writes new words and their meanings. Writing helps Anna remember what she hears. She also practices writing sentences using new words. Anna's story shows that listening to stories and writing about them helps improve your English. Next, I want to share the story of James. James likes sports. He listens to podcasts about football and basketball. James writes down player names, scores, and important words. He writes short reports about games and talks with his friends using new words. Writing and listening help James speak more naturally about his favorite sports. Let me tell you about Kate. Kate is learning English for her job. She listens to podcasts about business and work. Kate writes down phrases used in meetings and emails. She practices writing emails using these phrases. Writing helps Kate feel confident at work. Kate's story shows that listening and writing can help improve your professional English. I want to share the story of Michael again. Michael started listening to podcasts about travel. He wrote down places he wanted to visit and new travel words. Michael wrote short travel plans using the new words. Writing helped Michael practice using English in real situations. Michael's story shows that listening and writing about topics you like makes learning easier. Let me tell you about Tom. Tom is an engineer. His job requires him to work with many people from different countries. Sometimes Tom finds it difficult to understand their English because of different accents and fast speech. To improve, Tom started listening to English podcasts about technology and engineering. After listening, he wrote down new technical words and phrases. He also wrote simple sentences to practice these words. Tom read his sentences out loud to improve his speaking skills. After a few weeks, Tom noticed that he could understand his colleagues better and join their discussions more easily. Tom's story shows that listening to English related to your work and writing about it helps improve your skills. Now, I want to share the story of Anna. Anna is a mother of 2 children. She wants to help her children with their school English. Anna listens to children's stories in English every day. She writes down new words and phrases she hears. Then, Anna writes short sentences using these new words. Anna reads these sentences aloud to practice her pronunciation. She also reads them to her children to help them learn. Anna's story shows that listening to simple English stories and writing helps both parents and children improve their English. Let me tell you about George. George works as a taxi driver. He meets many people every day. Some speak very fast and use slang words that George does not know. George listens to English podcasts during his breaks. He writes down new slang words and their meanings. George also writes short dialogues using the new words to practice speaking. This daily routine helps George understand his passengers better and speak English more naturally. George's story shows that listening and writing every day can help you learn informal and everyday English. Next, I want to talk about Lisa. Lisa loves gardening. She found an English podcast about gardening and listens to it every week. Lisa writes down the names of plants, gardening tools, and actions she hears. She makes flashcards with the words and their meanings. Lisa writes short paragraphs about her own garden using the new vocabulary. When she goes to gardening clubs, she feels more confident talking with other members. Lisa's story teaches us that learning English related to your hobbies makes learning more interesting and useful. Let me share a story about Jack. Jack is planning a trip to another country. He listens to English podcasts about travel and tourism. Jack writes down the names of places, important travel words, and useful phrases. He practices writing travel plans and questions he might ask during his trip. Writing helps Jack remember the words and feel ready for his travel. Jack's story shows that listening and writing about your future plans helps you use English confidently. Now, I want to tell you about Emma. Emma works in a busy restaurant. She speaks to many customers every day. Sometimes customers use difficult words or speak very fast. Emma listens to English podcasts about food and customer service. She writes down new words and phrases she hears. Emma practices writing short dialogues she might use with customers. Writing helps Emma improve her grammar and vocabulary. Emma's story shows that practicing listening and writing related to your work helps you perform better. Let me tell you about Peter. Peter is a student. He listens to English podcasts about science and nature. Peter writes summaries of the episodes and new words. He also writes questions about the topics to discuss with his classmates. Writing helps Peter understand and remember the information better. Peter's story shows that listening and writing help you learn new subjects and prepare for school. I want to share the story of Olivia. Olivia wants to make new friends who speak English. She listens to podcasts about social events and everyday conversations. Olivia writes down interesting topics and questions she can ask people. She practices writing and speaking these questions. Olivia feels more confident when she talks with new people. Olivia's story shows that listening and writing help you communicate better in social situations. Let me tell you about James. James loves sports. He listens to English podcasts about football and basketball. James writes down player names, game scores, and important words. He writes short reports about matches and shares them with friends. Writing and listening help James speak more naturally about his favorite sports. Now I want to share a story about Kate. Kate is learning English for her job. She listens to podcasts about business and meetings. Kate writes down useful phrases and sentences. She practices writing emails and reports using these phrases. Writing helps Kate feel confident at work. Kate's story shows that listening and writing help improve your professional English. Let me tell you about Michael. Michael started listening to podcasts about daily news. He writes notes about important events and new words. Michael writes short articles using the words he learned. Writing helps Michael improve his grammar and vocabulary. Michael's story shows that listening and writing about current events make learning English practical. I want to share the story of Claire. Claire enjoys reading books in English. She listens to podcasts where people read stories aloud. Claire writes summaries of the stories and new words. She practices writing sentences with these words. Writing helps Claire remember the stories and improve her English. Let me tell you about Robert. Robert works in an office. He listens to podcasts about office work and communication. Robert writes down new words and phrases. He practices writing emails and reports. Writing helps Robert communicate better at work. Now I want to talk about Lucy. Lucy moved to a new city. She listens to podcasts about city life and culture. Lucy writes paragraphs about what she hears. Writing helps Lucy understand and use English in daily life. Let me tell you about Andrew. Andrew works at a bank. Every day he helps customers with their money problems. Some customers speak clearly, but others speak very fast or use difficult words. Andrew wanted to understand them better, so he started listening to English podcasts about banking and customer service. After listening, he writes down new phrases like open an account, transfer money, or check the balance. He writes full sentences like, I would like to transfer money to another account. Then he practices speaking these sentences slowly and clearly. After 2 months, Andrew noticed that he could understand customers better. He also felt more confident speaking English. Listening and writing helped him do his job better. Now let's talk about Susan. Susan is a nurse. She works in a hospital and often talks to patients who speak English. She wants to give clear instructions and understand their needs. Susan started listening to English podcasts about health and hospital vocabulary. She hears phrases like, take this medicine 3 times a day, or do you have any allergies? Susan writes the new words and makes short dialogues. She writes things like, good morning, my name is Susan. I will check your blood pressure now. She reads her dialogues aloud and practices speaking them with a friend. This helped Susan speak with her patients clearly and understand them more easily. Listening and writing helped her become a better nurse. Let me tell you about David. David owns a small shop. He sells clothes and shoes. Tourists often visit his shop and speak English. At first, David found it hard to talk with them. He did not understand their questions, and he didn't know how to answer. So David listened to podcasts about shopping and sales in English. He wrote down phrases like, do you have this in a larger size? Or, how much does this cost? David wrote example conversations like, welcome, can I help you find something? Or, this shirt is $20. He practiced these conversations every morning. After some time, he was able to speak to tourists with ease. Listening and writing gave him the tools to help more customers and sell more items. Now let me tell you about Mary. Mary is a teacher in a primary school. Her school started a new English program for children, and she needed to improve her own English. Mary began listening to podcasts that tell simple stories and teach classroom language. She wrote down useful phrases like, please open your books. Let's start with a warm-up and raise your hand if you know the answer. Mary made her own list of commands and questions and practiced them every day before school. She also wrote short role-play scripts where she played both the teacher and the student. For example, she wrote, teacher, what is the capital of England? Student, London. Mary read these scripts aloud until she felt comfortable. Her students responded well, and her confidence grew. Mary shows us that listening and writing can help anyone become a better communicator in the classroom. Let's talk about Stephen. Stephen is a delivery driver. He drives around the city and gives packages to people. Sometimes he has to speak English when delivering to offices or homes. At first, Stephen felt nervous. He didn't know how to answer questions like, can I leave the package at the door, or do I need to sign? Stephen found a podcast about delivery jobs and customer service in English. He listened every day during lunch breaks. He wrote down sentences like, please sign here, or this is your package, have a nice day. He wrote little scripts to practice different situations. One example was, customer, I wasn't home. Can I get the package tomorrow? Stephen, yes, I will come back in the morning. By writing and practicing, Stephen became more confident and polite in English. He now enjoys talking to customers. Now I want to share a story about Rachel. Rachel is a stay-at-home mother. She wants to improve her English so she can help her children with school and also talk to neighbors in the community. Rachel started listening to podcasts that talk about parenting and daily life. She wrote down useful phrases like, I am picking up my child from school, or what time is the parent meeting? Rachel wrote short stories about her daily routine. For example, she wrote, "In the morning I make breakfast for my children, then I walk them to school." She read these stories out loud and practiced pronunciation. She also started using these sentences when talking to other parents. Listening and writing helped her feel more connected to others and more confident in her role as a mother. Let me talk about Daniel. Daniel is preparing for a job interview. He is nervous because the interview will be in English. Daniel listens to podcasts about job interviews and workplace conversations. He writes down common questions and answers like, "Can you tell me about yourself?" and "Why do you want to work here?" Daniel writes full answers for each question. For example, "My name is Daniel. I have 5 years of experience in customer service. I am a good team worker and I enjoy helping people." He practices saying his answers clearly. After a few days, he records himself and listens to how he sounds. He corrects his grammar and pronunciation. By listening and writing, Daniel gets ready to speak English with confidence in his interview. Next, let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah volunteers at a community center. She helps new families who move to the city. Many of them speak English, and Sarah wants to improve her communication. She listens to podcasts that talk about city services and how to give directions. She writes down helpful phrases like, "You need to fill out this form," "The post office is near the supermarket," or "Please bring your ID." Sarah creates short dialogues that include questions and answers. She practices them with a friend. One of her dialogues is, "Person A, how do I get to the city hall?" Person B, walk straight and turn right at the second street. Writing and listening every day helped Sarah become a better helper in her community. Let's talk about Thomas. Thomas is learning English because he wants to open his own business. He listens to podcasts about business English. He writes down new words like profit, inventory, and customer service. He also writes practice sentences like, "Our shop opens at 9 a.m. We offer discounts for large orders," or "Customer satisfaction is very important." Thomas writes daily reports about his small business plans. He reads them aloud to hear how they sound. These exercises help him speak more clearly and write better business emails and messages. Thomas believes that listening and writing are important parts of learning. Now let me tell you about Jennifer. Jennifer is an office worker. She sends emails and talks to her team in English. She listens to podcasts about office language and communication. She writes short emails as practice. For example, she writes, "Dear John, I hope you are well. Please find the report attached. Let me know if you have any questions." Jennifer also practices writing short meeting notes. She listens to podcast examples and writes down how to take notes quickly. This makes her more organized at work and helps her feel confident when using English with her team. Now let us talk about William. William is a father of 2 children. He works in a hardware store. Sometimes customers speak English, and William wants to understand and answer them correctly. He decided to learn English by listening to real conversations. He found a podcast where workers talk about tools, fixing things, and helping customers. He listens carefully and writes down useful phrases like, "You can find that in aisle 5," or "We are out of stock, but we will have more next week." William also writes short dialogues. One of his dialogues says, "Customer, I need a new hammer." William, "Sure, follow me. I will show you the best one we have." Every night after dinner, William reads these dialogues out loud. His wife helps him by reading the customer part. They laugh and learn together. After 1 month, William spoke more clearly and confidently. Now he can help all kinds of customers in English. Listening to real examples and writing simple phrases helped him a lot. Let me share the story of Emma. Emma is a homemaker. She lives in a small town and wants to join the women's community group in her area. The group speaks English, and they often have meetings to discuss daily issues like shopping, health, and cleaning. Emma feels shy when speaking English. She starts listening to podcasts about everyday life. She hears words like grocery list, laundry, vacuum cleaner, and organize the kitchen. Emma writes down these words and adds examples. For example, she writes, I clean the house every morning, or I go to the market to buy fresh vegetables. She also writes about her daily routine. One of her stories says, Today I cooked rice and chicken for lunch. Then I cleaned the table and helped my daughter with her homework. Emma reads these stories every day and practices speaking with her neighbor, Linda. She now speaks with more confidence in her group meetings. Listening and writing gave Emma the words she needed to connect with others. Let me now tell you about Robert. Robert is a security guard. He works in a building where many people speak English. He needs to ask questions, give directions, and report problems. Robert listens to a podcast made for workers like him. He hears phrases like, please, show your ID, where are you going, and there is a problem on the 3rd floor. Robert keeps a notebook and writes the new phrases. He also writes sample reports like, at 9 a.m. I saw a man without an ID at the entrance, or I helped a visitor find the HR office. Every morning before work, Robert reads his notes. He also records himself speaking and listens to check his pronunciation. After a few weeks, he speaks more clearly and writes better reports. His supervisor tells him he is doing well. Listening and writing every day helped Robert feel more prepared for his job. Now let me tell you about Lisa. Lisa works in a bakery. She prepares bread, cookies, and cakes every morning. Customers sometimes ask for things in English. Lisa wants to speak kindly and clearly. She listens to a podcast about food service and bakery shops. She learns phrases like, would you like a bag? This cake has no nuts. Or, we have a discount today. Lisa writes these phrases on cards and reads them while working. She also writes small conversations like, customer, is this bread fresh? Lisa, yes, it was baked this morning. She practices these dialogues with her friend Paul, who works in a nearby coffee shop. They practice together every evening after work. Lisa's listening and writing habits help her serve her customers better. Her boss notices her improvement and thanks her for her good work. Let me tell you about Kevin. Kevin is a bus driver. He drives through the city every day. Tourists often ask him questions in English. Kevin wants to answer them correctly. He finds a podcast for drivers and transport workers. He listens to phrases like, this bus goes to the city center. You need to get off at the next stop. And please show your ticket. Kevin writes these sentences in a notebook. He practices them by reading aloud while waiting between trips. He writes short scenes. One scene says, passenger, does this bus go to the museum? Kevin, yes, you can get off after 3 stops. After a few weeks, Kevin feels more ready to speak in English. He even helps his coworkers by sharing his notes. Listening and writing gave Kevin the confidence to talk to people from around the world. Now let us hear about Helen. Helen works at a clinic. She helps patients with forms and appointments. Many patients speak English, and Helen wants to speak clearly and politely. She listens to a podcast about clinics and hospitals. She learns phrases like, please wait in the lobby, do you have an appointment, and fill out this form. Helen writes these phrases in a notebook and practices them every morning. She also writes small role-play scenes like, patient, I need to see the doctor. Helen, what is your name? Please wait for a moment. Helen also writes daily reports in English. One report says, today 10 patients came in the morning. One patient had a fever, another had a broken arm. Helen reads her writing to her coworker James, who helps her correct grammar. After 1 month, Helen's English becomes stronger. She speaks more naturally and writes clearly. Listening and writing helped her improve her job performance. Let me now tell you about Frank. Frank is a construction worker. His team includes workers from different countries. They use English to talk to each other. Frank wants to give and follow instructions correctly. He listens to a podcast about construction work. He learns phrases like, "Pass me the hammer," "This wall is not level," or "We will finish by 5 p.m. Frank writes these phrases in a notebook and makes short instructions. He writes, "Lift the box carefully, wear your helmet, stay away from the edge." Frank practices these instructions during lunch. He also writes about what he does every day. One story says, "Today we built a wall. I mixed the cement and helped carry bricks." Frank shares these writings with his cousin Peter, who corrects his grammar. Frank speaks more clearly now and feels more safe at work. Listening and writing helped Frank become a better team member. Let us talk about Jane. Jane works at a hotel. She cleans rooms and sometimes talks to guests. She wants to welcome guests in English. Jane listens to a podcast about hotel staff. She hears phrases like, "Good morning, how can I help you?" "Your room is ready," and "Please let us know if you need anything." Jane writes down these sentences and reads them during her break. She also writes her own stories. One of her writings says, "Today I cleaned 10 rooms. One guest asked for more towels. I brought them quickly." Jane practices reading her writing out loud. She becomes more comfortable speaking with guests. Her manager notices her improvement and thanks her. Listening to real English and writing her own sentences helped Jane speak more naturally. Now I will tell you about Henry. Henry is a farmer. He wants to sell his vegetables at the local market. Many customers speak English. Henry listens to a podcast about farming and markets. He hears sentences like, "These carrots are fresh," "One basket is $5," and "Do you want a plastic bag?" Henry writes these down and practices them before going to the market. He also writes short customer conversations like, "Customer, are these potatoes organic?" Henry, "Yes, they are from my farm." Henry practices with his wife, who also helps at the stall. Listening and writing helped Henry sell more and talk better with customers. I want to share more stories about people who learned English by listening and writing. These stories will help you see how small steps can lead to big improvements. Let us start with Mark. Mark is a taxi driver in a busy city. Many passengers speak English with different accents. Mark sometimes finds it hard to understand them. He started listening to podcasts about transportation and travel. He heard common sentences like, "Can you take me to the airport?" "How much is the fare?" And "Please wait here for a moment." Mark writes these phrases in a notebook. He writes short dialogues to practice. One dialogue says, "Passenger, can you take me to the train station?" Mark, "Yes, it will take about 20 minutes." Every evening, Mark reads his notes and repeats the sentences. He also listens to the podcast again to improve his understanding. After 2 months, Mark feels more confident talking with passengers. His English improved because he listened carefully and wrote useful phrases. Now let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah works in a small restaurant. She takes orders and serves food. Many customers speak English. Sarah sometimes finds it hard to understand all the orders. She started listening to a podcast for restaurant workers. She heard sentences like, "What would you like to drink?" "Do you want your steak rare or well done?" and "The soup is very hot." Sarah writes these sentences and practices them during her breaks. She also writes simple stories about her workday. One story says, "Today I served 20 customers. One customer asked for water, another wanted a salad." Sarah reads her stories every day and practices speaking with her co-workers. After a few weeks, she understands customers better and speaks more clearly. Listening and writing helped Sarah in her job. Let us now talk about David. David is a postman. He delivers letters and packages. Many people speak English in his area. David wants to communicate well with customers. He listens to podcasts about daily life and postal services. He hears phrases like, "Can you sign here?" "This package is for you, and please wait a moment." David writes these phrases and practices them by imagining conversations. One practice says, "Customer, is my letter here?" "David, let me check for you." David reads these conversations aloud every day. He also listens to the podcast again to improve his pronunciation. After some time, David speaks with customers more easily and writes simple reports. Listening and writing help David improve his communication skills. Now I want to share the story of Anna. Anna works at a library. She helps visitors find books and use computers. Many visitors speak English. Anna wants to speak politely and clearly. She listens to podcasts about libraries and customer service. She hears sentences like, "Can I help you find a book?" "The computers are over there, and please return the books in 2 weeks." Anna writes these sentences and practices them every day. She also writes short dialogues to practice. One dialogue says, "Visitor, where are the history books?" "Anna, they are on the second floor." Anna reads her notes out loud and practices speaking with her friends. After a few weeks, she feels more confident and helpful at work. Listening and writing helped Anna speak better English. Let us hear about John. John works at a gas station. He sells fuel and snacks. Many customers speak English. John sometimes finds it hard to understand all the questions. He started listening to a podcast for gas station workers. He heard phrases like, "Do you want a receipt?" "The price of gasoline has gone up." And "Can I help you with anything else?" John writes these phrases and practices speaking during his breaks. He also writes stories about his work. One story says, "Today I helped 30 customers. One customer asked for directions, another bought a sandwich." John reads his stories every day. After some time, he understands customers better and talks more clearly. Listening and writing helps John improve his English skills. Now I want to tell you about Emily. Emily is a nurse assistant. She helps nurses and talks with patients. Many patients speak English. Emily wants to speak kindly and clearly. She listens to podcasts about healthcare. She hears sentences like, "How are you feeling today?" "Please take your medicine," and "Do you need help walking?" Emily writes these sentences and practices them every day. She also writes short role plays. One role play says, "Patient, I have a headache." "Emily, let me get a nurse for you." Emily reads her notes aloud and practices speaking with her co-workers. After some weeks, she speaks with patients more easily and feels more confident. Listening and writing helped Emily a lot. Let me now share the story of Michael. Michael works in a supermarket. He stocks shelves and helps customers find products. Many customers speak English. Michael listens to podcasts about shopping and customer service. He hears phrases like, "Where can I find the milk?" "The bread is on aisle 3, and do you have any coupons?" Michael writes these phrases and practices them while working. He also writes short conversations to practice. One conversation says, "Customer, do you have fresh apples?" Michael, "Yes, they are in the fruit section." Michael reads his notes every day. After a while, he understands customers better and helps them more easily. Listening and writing helped Michael improve his English. Let us talk about Olivia. Olivia is a teacher assistant. She helps students and teachers. Many students speak English. Olivia wants to understand students better and speak clearly. She listens to podcasts about school life and education. She hears phrases like, "Please, open your books. Do you need help with homework?" And, "The test is next week." Olivia writes these phrases and practices them every day. She also writes stories about her work. One story says, "Today I helped students with math. I answered questions and explained instructions." Olivia reads her stories and practices speaking with her friends. After some weeks, she feels more confident in. Now I want to tell you about George. George is a mechanic. He repairs cars and talks with customers. Many customers speak English. George listens to podcasts about cars and repairs. He hears phrases like, "Your car needs a new battery." "The brakes are worn out, and it will take 2 hours to fix." George writes these phrases and practices them during breaks. He also writes short conversations to practice. One conversation says, "Customer, how long will the repair take?" "George, about 2 hours." George reads his notes every day and practices speaking. After some time, George feels more comfortable talking to customers. Listening and writing helped George speak better English. Now I will tell you about Lisa. Lisa works in a small bakery. She sells bread and cakes to customers. Many customers speak English. Sometimes Lisa found it hard to understand their orders. She started listening to podcasts about food and customer service. She heard sentences like, "I would like a loaf of bread. Do you have any gluten-free cakes? And can I pay by card?" Lisa wrote these sentences and practiced them every day. She also wrote simple stories about her workday. One story said, "Today I served 20 customers. One customer bought a cake, another asked for bread." Lisa read her stories every day and practiced speaking with her co-workers. After a few weeks, she understood customers better and spoke more confidently. Listening and writing helped Lisa do better at work. Next, let us hear about James. James works in a hotel. He helps guests at the front desk. Many guests speak English. James wanted to speak politely and clearly. He listened to podcasts about hotels and travel. He heard sentences like, "Welcome to our hotel. Do you have a reservation?" And "Your room is ready." James wrote these sentences and practiced them every day. He also wrote short dialogues to practice. One dialogue said, "Guest, can I check in now?" James, "Yes, please fill out this form." James read his notes aloud and practiced speaking with his co-workers. After some weeks, he felt more confident speaking English with guests. Listening and writing helped James improve his English skills. Now I want to share the story of Emma. Emma works as a cashier in a grocery store. Many customers speak English. Sometimes Emma found it hard to understand their questions. She started listening to podcasts about shopping and sales. She heard phrases like, "Do you have a loyalty card? Your total is $20. And would you like a bag?" Emma wrote these phrases and practiced them every day. She also wrote short stories about her work. One story said, "Today, I helped 30 customers. One customer asked about prices. Another needed help finding fruit." Emma read her stories and practiced speaking with her friends. After a while, she understood customers better and spoke more clearly. Listening and writing helped Emma improve her English. Let us talk about Robert. Robert is a gardener. He plants flowers and cuts grass. Sometimes Robert talks with customers who speak English. He wanted to understand and speak better. Robert listened to podcasts about gardening and outdoor work. He heard sentences like, "When do you want the garden done? The flowers need water every day, and I will be there at 9 o'clock. Robert wrote these sentences and practiced them every day. He also wrote short conversations to practice. One conversation said, "Customer, can you come tomorrow?" Robert, "Yes, I will be there in the morning." Robert read his notes every day and practiced speaking. After some time, Robert felt more comfortable speaking English. Listening and writing helped Robert do better in his work. Now I want to tell you about Susan. Susan works in a small office. She answers phones and writes emails. Many people speak English on the phone. Susan wanted to speak clearly and understand better. She listened to podcasts about office work and communication. She heard sentences like, "Can I speak with Mr. Johnson? Please hold for a moment." and I will send you an email. Susan wrote these sentences and practiced them every day. She also wrote short stories about her day at work. One story said, "Today I answered 20 phone calls. I helped people with questions." Susan read her stories aloud and practiced speaking with her coworkers. After a few weeks, she felt more confident on the phone. Listening and writing helped Susan improve her English. Let us now hear about Daniel. Daniel works in a small shop. He sells clothes to customers. Many customers speak English. Daniel wanted to understand customers better and speak clearly. He listened to podcasts about shopping and clothes. He heard phrases like, "What size? Do you need? This shirt is on sale. And can I help you find something?" Daniel wrote these phrases and practiced them every day. He also wrote short dialogues to practice. One dialogue said, "Customer, do you have this in blue?" Daniel, "Yes, it is over there." Daniel read his notes every day and practiced speaking. After some time, Daniel understood customers better and spoke more confidently. Listening and writing helped Daniel improve his English skills. Now I want to share the story of Laura. Laura works as a bus driver. She drives people to work and school. Many passengers speak English. Laura wanted to understand their questions and speak clearly. She listened to podcasts about transportation and travel. She heard sentences like, "What time is the next bus? This bus goes to the city center. And please have your ticket ready." Laura wrote these sentences and practiced them every day. She also wrote short conversations to practice. One conversation said, "Passenger, does this bus stop near the station?" Laura, "Yes, it stops at the next corner." Laura read her notes every day and practiced speaking. After a while, Laura felt more confident talking with passengers. Listening and writing helped Laura improve her English. Let us hear about Kevin. Kevin works in a small restaurant. He cooks food and talks with customers. Many customers speak English. Kevin wanted to understand orders better and speak clearly. He listened to podcasts about food and restaurants. He heard sentences like, "What would you like to eat? Do you want your meal spicy? And the food will be ready soon." Kevin wrote these sentences and practiced them every day. He also wrote short stories about his work. One story said, "Today I cooked dinner for 20 people. One customer wanted extra sauce." Kevin read his stories aloud and practiced speaking with his coworkers. After some weeks, he felt more confident speaking English. Listening and writing helped Kevin improve his skills. Now I want to tell you about Anna. Anna works in a flower shop. She sells flowers and helps customers. Many customers speak English. Anna wanted to speak politely and clearly. She listened to podcasts about flowers and customer service. She heard sentences like, "Can I help you find flowers for a birthday? These roses are fresh. And would you like a card with the flowers?" Anna wrote these sentences and practiced them every day. She also wrote short dialogues to practice. One dialogue said, "Customer, do you have tulips?" Anna, "Yes, they are over there." Anna read her notes every day and practiced speaking. After some time, Anna felt more comfortable speaking English. Listening and writing helped Anna do better at work. Now let me tell you about Brian. Brian works at a gas station. He sells fuel and snacks. Many customers speak English. Brian wanted to understand questions better and speak clearly. He listened to podcasts about gas stations and sales. He heard phrases like, "Do you want regular or premium gas? The price per liter is $2. And would you like a receipt?" Brian wrote these phrases and practiced them every day. He also wrote short stories about his work. One story said, "Today I helped 40 customers. One customer needed directions, another bought snacks." Brian read his stories aloud and practiced speaking with his co-workers. After some time, he felt more confident speaking English. Listening and writing helped Brian improve his skills. These stories show that listening carefully and writing simple sentences every day help you improve your English little by little. The key is to practice often and use real examples from your daily life. Keep listening to English podcasts and write what you hear. Now let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah works in a small cafe. She takes orders from customers and makes coffee. Sarah wanted to speak English clearly and understand her customers well. She started listening to podcasts about cafes and food service. She heard common phrases like, "Can I have a cappuccino, please? Do you want sugar or milk? And your order will be ready soon." Sarah wrote these phrases and practiced them every day. She also wrote short stories about her workday. One story said, "Today I served 20 customers. One customer asked for a sandwich. Another wanted a tea." Sarah read her stories aloud and practiced speaking with her co-workers. After some weeks, Sarah understood her customers better and spoke more confidently. Listening and writing helped Sarah improve her English. Next, I want to share the story of John. John works in a supermarket. He helps customers find products and answers their questions. John wanted to understand customers better and speak politely. He listened to podcasts about shopping and customer service. He heard sentences like, "Where can I find the milk? The bread is in aisle 5. And, do you need help with your bags?" John wrote these sentences and practiced them every day. He also wrote dialogues to practice speaking. One dialogue said, "Customer, where is the cheese?" John, "It is in the refrigerated section." John read his notes aloud and practiced speaking with his friends. After a few weeks, he felt more comfortable speaking English. Listening and writing helped John improve his skills. Now I will tell you about Emma. Emma is a nurse. She works in a hospital and talks to patients and doctors. Emma wanted to speak clearly and understand medical words. She listened to podcasts about health and medicine. She heard phrases like, "Do you have any allergies? When did the pain start? And you need to take this medicine twice a day." Emma wrote these sentences and practiced them every day. She also wrote short stories about her work. One story said, "Today I helped 10 patients. One patient needed a bandage. Another had a fever." Emma read her stories aloud and practiced speaking with her co-workers. After some weeks, Emma understood her patients better and spoke more confidently. Listening and writing helped Emma improve her English. Let us talk about Mark. Mark is a mechanic. He fixes cars and talks to customers. Mark wanted to understand customers and explain the work he did. He listened to podcasts about cars and mechanics. He heard sentences like, "Your car needs a new battery. It will take 2 hours to fix, and the parts cost $50. Mark wrote these sentences and practiced them every day. He also wrote short dialogues to practice speaking. One dialogue said, "Customer, how long will the repair take?" Mark, "About 2 hours." Mark read his notes aloud and practiced speaking with his co-workers. After some time, Mark felt more confident speaking English. Listening and writing helped Mark improve his skills. Now I want to share the story of Lucy. Lucy works in a library. She helps people find books and uses the computer. Lucy wanted to speak clearly and understand questions. She listened to podcasts about libraries and computers. She heard sentences like, "Can you help me find this book? The library is open from 9 to 5, and you can use the computer for 1 hour." Lucy wrote these sentences and practiced them every day. She also wrote short stories about her day. One story said, "Today I helped 15 people. One person wanted a book about history. Another needed help with the printer." Lucy read her stories aloud and practiced speaking with her friends. After some weeks, Lucy felt more confident speaking English. Listening and writing helped Lucy improve her English. Now let us hear about David. David works in a post office. He sells stamps and helps people send packages. David wanted to understand customers better and speak politely. He listened to podcasts about the post office and mailing. He heard phrases like, "Do you want to send this by air or surface mail? The package will arrive in 3 days, and please fill out this form." David wrote these phrases and practiced them every day. He also wrote dialogues to practice. One dialogue said, "Customer, how long will delivery take?" David, "It takes about 3 days." David read his notes aloud and practiced speaking with his co-workers. After some weeks, David felt more comfortable speaking English. Listening and writing helped David improve his skills. Let me tell you about Anna. Anna works in a flower shop. She sells flowers and helps customers. Many customers speak English. Anna wanted to speak politely and clearly. She listened to podcasts about flowers and customer service. She heard sentences like, "Can I help you find flowers for a birthday? These roses are fresh." And, "Would you like a card with the flowers?" Anna wrote these sentences and practiced them every day. She also wrote short dialogues to practice. One dialogue said, "Customer, do you have tulips?" Anna, "Yes, they are over there." Anna read her notes every day and practiced speaking. After some time, Anna felt more comfortable speaking English. Listening and writing helped Anna do better at work. Now I want to share the story of Paul. Paul works at a gas station. He sells fuel and snacks. Many customers speak English. Paul wanted to understand questions better and speak clearly. He listened to podcasts about gas stations and sales. He heard phrases like, "Do you want regular or premium gas?" The price per liter is $2. And, "Would you like a receipt?" Paul wrote these phrases and practiced them every day. He also wrote short stories about his work. One story said, "Today I helped 40 customers. One customer needed directions. Another bought snacks." Paul read his stories aloud and practiced speaking with his co-workers. After some time, he felt more confident speaking English. Listening and writing helped Paul improve his skills. These stories show that listening carefully and writing simple sentences every day help you improve your English little by little. The key is to practice often and use real examples from your daily life. Keep listening to English podcasts and write what you hear.